Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am feeling much better, hence there'll be a lot more energy in this video. It's been a good Sunday in terms of FPL, and there is a lot to talk about, so I am very much looking forward to this video. I hope you had a good weekend, and I hope you had a good FPL week. Today, we will be looking at how my team did and a review on the players individually in terms of their prospects going forward and what we've seen. We'll be looking at each of the games and the learning and observations from them, as well as my transfer plans, which we're going to do in a slightly different style this week, given my thought process and general perspective on my transfers is slightly different this week. If you haven't subscribed, as you can see, we've got off to a great start so far this season. No chips used, and I've still got cells to play, so it's very likely I will have a 5-figure rank. And if you'd like to cash in on some of the luck and some of the analysis which has helped to get us there, please do consider subscribing. As a result, 50% of you who watch regularly aren't subscribed and haven't pressed the button. It will take you just a second, and I would genuinely be very appreciative. Not much else needs to be said, and this should be a very good video, so let's hop into it. Right, let us start with Cells, who actually hasn't played yet, but should he get a 2-pointer, considering I am only 1 point off a 5-figure rank, that should be enough to take me over the line, which would be absolutely magnificent. I'm hoping that we can get a clean sheet, and if we can get a haul, well, then we really could be looking at a 50k rank. A 50k rank is actually something we're going to discuss, because maybe we should be surpassing that already by now, as a result of a couple of decisions I made, which didn't really align with how I played throughout the rest of the season. So we'll come to that specifically in the midfield. But yeah, obviously not too much to discuss here. Very happy to keep him. I know some of you are considering Pickford after the video I made, and he kept a clean sheet. We're going to talk about him in more detail. I think he's probably the best goalkeeper in the game. I do, however, think for including this week, the next 3-4 cells is very solid. And if I had him, I probably wouldn't be going early. I think you can do it later down the line, especially when at the moment, which we're going to talk about in the transfer plan section, and hence why it's different. I think the game is in a very fragile state, and I think there are so many routes you can go. And I think there are a few players who probably now are going to start to receive slightly less praise than they should be. For example, one being Cole Palmer. After watching that Liverpool game, I would really, really like to buy him. So we're going to go over a few things later. But yeah, not too much to be said with sales, apart from a pretty easy hold. All right, now let's talk and actually do some analysis. Paul came into the side for Ezri Konsa. I saw Unai Emery say he was okay and fit to play, so I was pretty surprised to see him on the bench, because I thought if he's on the bench, then start, right? And Villa got themselves in trouble by not starting him. Something I've spoken about repeatedly this season, something that I first alluded to on X, was I don't think, especially the Villa centre-back pairing of Pau Torres and Diego Carlos, is physical enough to withstand the pressures they're going to face and the level of physicality they're going to face in the Champions League especially, but also the Premier League. Raul Jimenez, who we're going to touch on later, as we will with a lot of players, is a top striker and in really good form. And he isn't, though, one of the most physical or quick strikers, right? Physical in his own right, but more so like power in terms of running, like a Rodgers. He's not that type. And he's still, obviously, for his goal, created it fully from that. So I think Villa, in terms of their clean sheet prospects, are going to be far better against sides who don't have a very physically imposing striker. But as the league shifts to a more athletic game, there's going to be less and less of those sides. Even let's look at Palace in 12, which is a decent fixture. Well, okay, Nketiah might start alone, but if Mateta starts, that's an issue for them. Fortunately, Van Nissen is a slightly different type of striker. He's a bit smaller, and he will get through a lot of work, and he's good when you put the ball into him in terms of his physical strength, but in terms of his running power, it's not going to be a huge problem, I think, for these two. I assume Konsa comes back into the side, right? So there's still some decent chances for Konsa's clean sheet prospects in the next game week, and then I imagine a lot are looking to sell, hence why I touched on that. Lewis Hall could have got a clean sheet. Brighton didn't really have too much, but they had one well-taken chance, and that too was a bit of a mistake on the Newcastle's defensive end. You could argue whose mistake it was. I probably think it was more so Shares, but anyway, he had an outside chance of an attacking return in the first half, but wasn't to be. And with these two, we'll touch on them in the transfer plans. Obviously not, still slightly under the weather, so I apologize. Obviously not great having these two as my third and fourth, but it could be a lot worse. And look, Hall got me a clean sheet in game week 1. Konsa's got me a 9-pointer. Not the end of the world. Gabriel, I've seen people start to sell him. I spoke about not selling him before Bournemouth. I know he only got a 1-pointer, but I've seen even more people start to talk about selling him. For me, okay, fine, Saliba's out for one game. They probably won't keep a clean sheet against Liverpool. Okay, then the game's after, Newcastle away, Chelsea away. But still, with Arteta's philosophy, which again we'll talk about, and the defensive players they have, the physicality of this side, and the most important thing here is his box threat, which aligns so much with my theory that you need defenders who have significant attacking upside to offset this shift in philosophy from the Premier League managers, he fits that bill perfectly, and it's why I still think he's the best defender in the game. I think he is a set and forget. And there's other places to try and be clever. There really are, where you take a slightly intricate route, you take money out of a favored player, like a Trent, for example, and then you move it elsewhere and try and exploit upside in that manner. But Gabriel at 6 is underpriced, and I think you're already getting a bargain because he should really be 6'5". So then you have to go and get a player where he's also got to be 0.5 underpriced and be delivering. I just think you have to stick with Gabriel. I have him as the best defender. I have from the start, and I don't think there will be much that changes that. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they'll keep it clean against Liverpool without Saliba, but nonetheless, and we'll talk about them. Gvardiol, well, he was huge for me this week. In a very low-scoring week, for a defender to rock up with a 10-pointer, especially this season, especially when they concede so early on, that's so useful. You saw today, right? Look at the positions he was getting into. And again, the learning and observations were for that. But so useful to have a player of this quality in those positions. And whilst he is a very good way for me to get funds and shift to my ideal structure of 1 premium defender and then 3 4.5s, it's going to be difficult to sell him, especially knowing that even in the bigger games, when Rico Lewis might not play, he'll be even more advanced and attacking, have more responsibility, especially without Rodri being in the side, right, to an extent. And then obviously De Bruyne will come back, which I think could slightly offset that. For example, you saw in the West Ham game, right? Grealish on the left, De Bruyne left half space, very fluid, rotating. And in general, in terms of that left half space, when one wasn't there, the other was, and it kind of blocked Gvardiol's routes into them. Whereas today was slightly different when Gundo Bernardo popped up on the left. They didn't block the space too much because they weren't really great, in my opinion, which we're going to touch on. So for me, he's probably someone who's now looking towards more of a hold. Before the game, I was actually considering selling. But overall, apart from the fact that I would like one more transfer in the side in general, just so that I can move on one of Konsa or Hall without attacking repercussions, the defense and the goalkeeper is very solid. Well, I thought for a second I was going to get Harry Winks off the bench in a 3-pointer, which honestly isn't too bad when you consider all the things. But Phil Foden did come on, and in pretty much the last kick of the game, gets an assist for me and a 4-pointer. Now, that would be actually pretty decent when you consider that Son started and should have only got an 8-pointer. But if FPL Towers are to keep the fact that he gets that assist and a 12-pointer, then yeah, it's a pretty big swing. It's literally double 4. I can't really do anything about that. I think arguably it's the worst decision of all time in FPL because I think it's an objective decision that Son shouldn't be given that assist. But whatever, if you got it, good on you. Deserve your luck. Always deserve your luck. In terms of going forward, we'll leave that to the transfer plans, actually. The only thing I'm a little bit annoyed about, and we'll speak about here, is that this is the week that I didn't play like I have for the rest of the season. I was very much in a good routine of go through all the analysis, and at the end, you let your intuition kick in, and then you can make a decision. Whereas this week, I went purely with my intellect. I almost disregarded my intuition and my gut, and my intuition told me not to get Phil Foden and to captain Salah. And I was on Salah earlier, so a little bit annoying there, but whatever. We live and we learn, and I won't be doing that again. Semenyo should have had at least one, I thought, and it would have been nice if he was the one to wipe the Arsenal clean. But I was pretty happy that the Arsenal clean got wiped out because it is over 100% EO in a lot of leagues, the Arsenal defense. So that was fine. Rodgers, again, coming up trumps, 5.1, 3 sets of returns, 4 returns in the last 4 games. You would have liked him to get more considering he got a goal in just 9 minutes, some bonus points, which I've noticed he's actually not too good on because I think maybe he loses the ball too much or tackles. I don't know exactly what it is, but he's not great on the bonus system, so that's something to note. But yeah, just going nowhere, right? Because why would he when he's playing as a second striker for a Champions League side and the manager loves him and he's a very good player? Salah, what we're going to do here is slightly different. We're actually going to talk about Liverpool-Chelsea now, as opposed to giving them their own section because I thought a lot of you guys would have watched the game. So I can wrap it up quickly here and then go on to the other games. Obviously, earlier in the week when I did my Everything You Need to Know video, there was quite a lot of analysis on why I thought he could be the best captain. And then for other reasons, I thought it was on my end, it was just poor for me mentally to actually arrive at Haaland. And the fact that I somewhat disregarded Salah by the end because I told you I sort of ignored my intuition and I should have gone into that more and then looked at the Salah case more so. Gary O'Neill did indeed tweak the system and the conditions were there for Salah and he played very, very well. But look, getting a 12-pointer from him is still very, very solid in this type of week. Obviously, as a Chelsea fan, it was mixed emotions, but from an FPL standpoint, it's great. For me, if you don't have him, you've really got to be looking at getting him in. I think him and Palmer now just go a notch above everybody else in the game because of their prices. And Palmer's got rid of what I would say is the toughest fixture out of that block of 4. Newcastle, I still don't think would be great, but if you have him maybe a week or 2 early than other people do for Man United and Arsenal, you can maybe catch a price rise, some points. I think that's good. So him and Salah, I'd probably have a cut above. And then going back to Salah, I think in 10, you really, really might want to captain him. Bournemouth showed, again, going to their place is difficult. So for me, I think you would do well to at least consider a route whereby you can get him without too much hassle down the line. Okay, now let's speak about Liverpool and Chelsea. I thought the second half was pretty boring. I thought in terms of Maresca's setup, Sancho's associative nature worked to an extent in the first half because it provided a lot of combinations and ways to enter Liverpool's final third and sustain some pressure, sustain some territory, and potentially create there. But given his physical makeup, and he's not, I would say, the best athlete in the league or the best athletic left winger in the league or even close, he struggles to create those final killer actions, the ones where you need to be able to create a shot from yourself or manufacture something, and they really rely heavily on athleticism. And in those games where the left winger isn't going to cause you too much threat, or the wingers aren't going to cause you too much threat, I think it's going to be very difficult for Liverpool to concede because they're very compact centrally now. They've got the double pivot in front of Trent and Konate. They don't get pulled into channels too much. Like I said, the system is narrow, so even the fullbacks can help. So against teams where there's not a huge amount of focus on overloads on the wide areas or particularly athletic wingers, because Trent and Robbo are good in that sense, it's going to be very difficult to score against Liverpool. And those are the games I'll be looking for in terms of clean sheets. I thought Salah was very sharp. I thought Carson Jones was brilliant today. Gary Neville gave him man of the match, and rightly so. And it just shows that they've got some depth. So even when McAllister doesn't play, I thought Gravenberch was very good again today, receiving the hard turn so many times and was bypassing the press very easily or bypassing his man. So Liverpool, they look really solid. I think they could probably benefit from their front three doing a little bit more. Not so much Salah, but I think the 9 needs to be doing a little bit more for them to reach that next level. But overall, very solid, and I would be looking at retaining their assets in their attack. I think Luis Diaz will be decent for minutes, and with the way he's playing, I'm all for it, especially considering the lack of options at that price tag within midfield. Salah's obviously the golden one, and Nunes was okay when he came on today, right? So I think maybe eats into Hotta's minutes somewhat. So for me, Diaz and Salah. I think in the defense, I'll be looking at steering away just because the ones that are coming up are pretty difficult. Got Arsenal, Brighton, Villa. But when they turn in like 4 or 5 weeks, then I think that there's an opportunity there. From Chelsea side, okay, this game really, really, really made me want Palmer more than the 25 pointer against Brighton, because I still saw Palmer picking up so many good positions, and you could still see glimpses of that technical quality. Honestly, he could have scored today. There were a couple chances in the first half where I thought he should have done better. And yeah, I think I'm probably higher on Cole Palmer now than I was. I think also Phil Foden's issue in terms of expected minutes, which we'll come on to, has put me that way as well. And for all of those reasons, I will definitely be looking at routes to getting him, and I suggest you potentially do the same. I wouldn't say Reece James is an option. If he's not going to be the one that's inverting and therefore getting up the pitch, if it's always going to be Cucurella on the left side or Gusto on the left side, and Gusto's very comfortable in the central midfield pockets, I think, sure, like you'll get once in a blue moon a decent strike from Reece James that will result in a goal, but also with his expected minutes concerns, there's just, and the fixtures, it's just better to lean away. I know some people were talking about that, so I thought I'd address it. And from an FPL standpoint, there's not too much else to talk about, apart from the fact that Sanchez still looks good for Halls because we concede enough shots, and he's shaky enough to give the ball away to concede shots for him. So that's a roundup of Liverpool-Chelsea. I mean, this is a bit of a horror show on paper, right? Calvert-Lewin running, we'll talk about it more in the transfer plan sections, and the learning observations. Patience is running thin, especially when there is a really nice opportunity present. I can't really do much if he keeps getting in the positions and missing chances. Like, I don't really know what I'm meant to do with the fixtures being good and he's still getting in the positions. It's a very difficult sell to justify at his price particularly, but I'm getting closer and closer. Havertz, I knew when I saw the lineup, I was like, oh, we're in trouble here, because Arsenal away are not a side that are going to create a high volume of chances in most cases, as you will see in the learning and observations. And he didn't have his creative in Saka, and there was no Odegaard, and there was a midfielder, Rice Marina. So I didn't really mind it was a 2-pointer. I thought it would have been very lucky to get anything else but that. Haaland genuinely didn't have a sniff. I was pleasantly surprised that Gary O'Neill did adopt a new system. Good on him. I think it showed good tactical flexibility, and he'd learned from Arteta and Eddie Howe as to what works to stopping the big man and therefore stopping a lot of City in particular. Against the 5 at the back system, I think Pep needs to develop a new solve, and I think honestly it really involves Phil Foden if he's going to use Haaland in this manner. Going forward with him, well, obviously we pretty much have to captain him in game week 9, right? Like, how can we not? But then going forward, actually, you have to keep him for Brighton as well. After that, though, then I think we can start to have conversations about, could we actually relinquish him? And is it optimal, like solely optimal to relinquish him? We'll come on to that a little bit later. But that is the team review. Overall, very happy and look forward to hopefully having a 5-figure rank tomorrow. Right, now let's go into some more match analysis, and then you can take what is necessary and how that translates into FPL. I wasn't very impressed by the Silva-Gundo pairing in the middle, particularly in the first half. I thought it was slow, and I think when you're trying to move a back 5 where your striker and your biggest goal threat is very much occupied in both spatial terms and physical terms, you really need to be quick, because you need to be able to pull players left and right in terms of the opposition's players, especially when they're not jumping. You saw against Liverpool, right? They jumped when they were playing their back 4, their midfielders. They weren't jumping today. So you've got to move that ball so quickly. You've got to find yourself in pockets of space, and you have to leverage ball striking from outside of the box, which is something we've seen at an increasing frequency against slower box to be successful. And they weren't. They were pretty slow. I thought also when they entered the left half space, they weren't really supporting Guardiola in the way I would have liked. I would have actually liked some more shot volume from them, just to give Guardiola a different option in terms of the route he could take. Also, they weren't really manufacturing anything for him in particular. They weren't combining with Doku, so I hope we don't see this again. I haven't really been too impressed with Gundo since he came back into the league. So I'm hoping that Foden starts the next game, especially because he was the one to get the assist, but yeah, if this is going to be the pairing, whilst maybe De Bruyne's expected minutes are slightly lower, albeit he should be back next week, then I'm really not too high on Haaland. When he plays against the back 5, and it's continuously worked now, right? So I imagine more and more managers will adopt this. I don't know what Southampton can do, and we'll talk about that later in the week. But he's nowhere near as good of an asset, especially with no De Bruyne, because what he thrives on is leveraging his level of physicality, right? Which is going to be better in the games where there are a lot of transitions, Spurs, and there's a lot of space in behind, also Spurs. But Spurs have a brilliant recovery run in Van der Ven, so it's not even that easy. Basically, would like Brighton. That is the game that you would like. Hence why there's no way I sell him before Southampton, Brighton in 9 and 10. But in the games after, when there's congested space and not a lot in behind, then I think we really need to have a discussion about what to do. Guardiola, again, similar to Gabriel in weeks past, has proved the theory that this is why you buy defenders with high attacking upside and genuine attacking quality, and at least some baseline level of clean sheet probability. Hence why I'm not so high on Leif Davis, because in this season, people are just going to score goals against you. They're going to score goals against pretty much everyone. I don't actually think there's like that good of a side in the Premier League. I was thinking about this yesterday, and I look at all the teams, and none of them inspire fear in me, even as a Chelsea fan. That's not to say that there's not better teams than us, like City, Arsenal, and Liverpool are better teams than us, but they don't scare me. And I think for those reasons, given the gap isn't actually super big this year, and the shift in philosophy, everyone's pretty much going to score some decent amount of goals. I thought Grealish was good when he came on for a variety of hidden reasons, but I just wanted to give him some prop. And yeah, apart from that, Wolves, of course. Cunha, good. I think he has so much responsibility in the system and against this side to carry the ball for such large distances that it was understandable he got an early sub. I still think he's going to be great going forward, and we'll be looking at him. They do lack a bit of a passer in the middle. Like, he has to do so much because he has to carry, but he also has to create a bit. He can go wide and go in the middle, and I think they need to support him somehow. How he's going to do that, I think he should use Forbes in a slightly more creative way from the right, kind of similar to how they deploy Saka, but that is certainly something to keep out for, because if they don't have like a passer, I think they'll be somewhat like a Bournemouth, where they'll rely a lot on the system creating chances for them, and you don't want that too much. Obviously, you've got Ryan on the left, which is super useful because he's got good technical quality in the final third as well. But I would be looking to see Forbes can start more often. Moving on to Villa and Fulham, Watkins, right, who isn't really being spoken about that much because none of the engaged managers really own him. He is so gone. I mean, if you've owned him, you've pretty much done well regardless of what else your team has done, right? Because there's an assumption that the rest of it is okay at least. He's been so good. And I think in this system where he doesn't channel run too much, yet he's still capable of it, and his finishing looks good, he's just fixture proof, right? And you can just expect like 9 points every week. Rodgers is great value, right? You just put him in that position. And at 5-1, 5-2, whatever he is now. Why would you? I won't say why would you ever sell, because I actually built a wildcard draft for someone and I didn't have Rodgers in it. And I don't think that was necessarily a bad decision. But like in a lot of cases, you can just keep Rodgers. I spoke about it earlier. They really need a new centre back slash right back, because at least Conte can play right back when there's a new centre back, and Conte can play centre back if there's a new right back. But yeah, they really need one. And I think if they don't, like I said, the physical strikers and just generally the very direct left wingers, they can get at Villa. The slow build-up worked for them, works for Digne as well. He's just going to keep getting attacking returns. I almost just assumed Maatsen would get in the side pretty early on, but when Digne is playing this well, how can you displace him? We talked about Jimenez earlier. He's just going to continue starting. There's no way you can drop him when he's playing this well. He also facilitates Adama's runs really well. Brilliant link play, so he brings others into the game. So if you wanted to go someone really cheap, he's certainly an option if you were looking to pivot from any forward, maybe like a DCL to get some funds to upgrade elsewhere. This is important. Smith Rowe was obviously benched for the City game. That was more so for defensive reasons. But one thing I've noticed with him, and you look at the game at Old Trafford, game 1 of the season, obviously his fitness levels were down and he was coming back from injury. But in the games where they have to transition a lot and it requires a lot of physical output, let's say, for lack of a better term that's coming to my head at the moment, it's going to be a little bit difficult for him because of his physical makeup at the moment. I think the more time he gets with his body post-injury and the more minutes he gets in his legs, the more he'll be able to deal with it. But when you have Rodgers in that vertical channel, so at times if he is to drop deep, Rodgers is going to get him, or Rodgers is going to drop deep himself and then be an issue for Smith Rowe. And then you just have a physical monster in Nana. It's going to be difficult for Smith Rowe to leverage his technical quality. And in those games, I could see it being a little bit more tough for him. So that is something to consider if you own him. But that's pretty much about it. Obviously, there's loads you could talk about. But in terms of FPL, I think that should be down. Now we move on to the controversy with Sakagate. Obviously, some of you, if not a lot of you, would have seen Andy Martin on Twitter, Tommy Gunn on Twitter. I thought it was brilliant. Brilliant entertainment on a Friday night. Genuinely, there's probably not many better things than that. And in terms of how much it would make you laugh. Yeah, sure, you can go to the club on a Friday night, but that gets boring after a while. But Andy Martin and Tommy Gunn doing that, that's a new one. Obviously, we didn't know he was going to start. Honestly, as well, when I sold Saka for Foden, I assumed he was going to play. I didn't want to take the risk, but I assumed he was going to play. I actually thought it was him in the picture as well. But, get pretty lucky, I guess, that he doesn't, because he could have definitely hurt, and a lot of managers still own him. This is what I was talking about earlier. Arteta's away from home philosophy is very defensively minded, right? And given the makeup of the side and I guess the lack of creativity in it, it means so much responsibility is left on Saka's shoulders to create, because Odegaard's not there as well. So without him, and obviously without Odegaard, and then you play a midfield of Rice and Marino. So in terms of the connectivity to getting it to the front line, because you don't have, let's say, the most elite passers. Rice is pretty good, right? But he's also got a lot of defensive responsibility, and he's not the creative type of passer. It's going to be difficult to create chances. It's why I didn't think they should have taken Sterling off. I thought they should have taken Crossland off instead, because he would helps with that in a slightly different way. But yeah, even with Saka, because he'll have to be deeper in these away games, given Arteta's philosophy and how it manifests, I think Arsenal won't create too many chances, and it's why I wasn't too high on the Newcastle away, Chelsea away. Liverpool at home should be fine if Saka's back. I actually fancy Arsenal for that. But those two games, if you are looking to offload, even Havertz potentially, I really don't think it's a bad idea, because what's Havertz going to do if he's not getting fed, right? In terms of the defense, I wouldn't worry too much, because you should only really be owning Gabriel, maybe Calafiori as a differential upside punt, which I think is an okay-ish risk to take given the current climate. If you own Raya, you probably know I don't like it, but whatever. Bournemouth, again, at home. Very, very difficult. I've been banging on about this. Don't underestimate them at home. Don't look at Game Week 10 and see Haaland going there and be like, oh, this is okay if it happens. It's not great. Like, Bournemouth at home, with the way they play, small pitch, very compact, aggressive, it's difficult. And Semenyo was points dodging, but Dango Otara is very useful for him because his volume of crosses, his carries, which are very good, particularly the crosses, they always seem to find Semenyo somehow because the quality of delivery is so good. They've obviously got an understanding. Semenyo's got a good understanding of where to be and when to be there. And that will help. So when them two play together, which I imagine will be at an increased frequency given the level of performance, you can expect good things. Newcastle assets will eventually be back on the menu, particularly when I say that I'm talking about Anthony and Alexander Isak, but he's pretty expensive, but particularly Gordon. He had quite a few chances as he was playing on the left this time, and where he should be playing, in my opinion. I'd rather have Barnes on the right and Gordon on the left. And he easily could have hauled out. I remember I was talking to someone about a free hit, and I was like, oh, I'll get Gordon. And they got harshly done by. I think just keep an eye on Gordon. In terms of the rest of Newcastle, you're probably not going to be buying their assets, right? So not much to discuss there. Especially like with the defense, it's not bad because you've always got a high upside to the goalkeeper, but he's pretty expensive. And the defenders don't look like they're getting too many attacking returns. So it's really just Gordon or bust. I would look for opportunities to exploit and just always have him in the back of your mind because you are planning like 3-4 weeks down the line, right? And when those fixtures swing, maybe this is someone you need to facilitate, and maybe you need to facilitate him now with the moves. Brighton, I've spoken about this before. I will call them the giant slayers of the league. They have enough attacking talent, and the coach is good enough at coaching attacking patterns. Hurtzler's very good at that. I like the fluidity they play with. I also like the responsibility he gives his players. They're just going to score. Against most teams, they're going to score, especially when they go to the Amex. So for all of those reasons, when you have defenders against them, be somewhat careful / skeptical and just tamper expectations, but you can get at them. Newcastle could have scored a few goals at least, and pretty much everyone will be able to score some goals against them. They'll be one of the better sides to, I think, take a captaincy punt on, against. And then if you can time the hauls of the likes of Mitoma and time the expected minutes, there is a hidden opportunity there as well. I would say that many aren't going to take due to one, poor planning, and due to two, poor risk appetite. For those of you who are somewhat active on X, you will know what I mean about the cartel, because a lot of the cartel, quote unquote, and just for the record, I'm like 99.9% sure that no one got a leak. For all of you guys piling on the rest of the content creators, just chill, man. Like I'm very confident they didn't. It's just no one really wanted to take an expected, or not even no one. Like a lot of people held Saka. A lot of people just didn't fancy the expected mins risk with Saka and the fact that he was a premium spot. That's what I assume, right? That was my logic. So I imagine theirs wouldn't have been too dissimilar given. Yeah, West Ham. Oh my god, I said every single week, I'm like, okay, they can't be as bad as last week. He's not going to do the same thing. He's not going to do the same thing. Maybe it's my own stubbornness. But like, he's a Premier League manager. And I mean no disrespect, because he obviously knows a lot more about football than myself. But why he keeps persisting with this, I cannot figure it out. The midfield of Rodriguez and Souček is just, it lacks legs. It lacks certain dual capacity, intelligence in terms of like how to play in that system to an extent. And then they're so susceptible in the middle to players who can carry well. When guys progress well quickly, centrally, and very vertically, they're susceptible to that. One of their best players, someone who was valued at 85 million in the summer, Paquetá, has performed so poorly because he's not a huge runner, right? So you need runners behind him, and they're not giving him that, and he's just getting lost in games. Kudus is I think Kudus is fed up. So yeah, I would just say just target them at the moment, because if he's not going to like change it now after all these defeats, maybe like after Ipswich, he's like, oh, this could work. Maybe I say I'll give him one more chance to change it. After that, I'm just targeting them week after week until he inevitably gets sacked. Because if he's going to play like this with this squad of players, he's getting sacked. Because there's no way you can do this in the Premier League at the moment, with the way that squads are made up. It's a shame because they have so much attacking talent. Like they could be really good with two very solid midfielders. They could be very good. They have a lot of good players. I think Bowen and Kudus sent off now. I think Bowen will still do fine in terms of points, but it's just like, would you really roll the dice at that price when they're playing like this? With Spurs, it played out obviously somewhat different to it's played out differently in terms of the extent that I expected them to attack and have as many chances as they did. But I was still expecting them creating, right? That's why I gave them their own section, and I talked about how this block of 4 fixtures were quite good. But obviously, the spread of output problem is still there. Solanke and Johnson, the two most popular ones, they didn't return because it was given to Son, Maddison, and Kulusevski, the three of the other front five. Then you've seen Maddison hooked at halftime, for tactical reasons. And then it begs the question, okay, what if he doesn't play Maddison and Kulusevski in the middle every game? Or what if he gets fed up with that? Not fed up with that, but he feels that at some points, for tactical reasons, he needs to tweak it and have Sarr and a more powerful runner. And Kulusevski looks minutes proof because I think he's so robust in so many senses, particularly defensively. You look at him just in the middle, and you need that now in the Premier League. And he's also very versatile, right? Like he can do things in the middle, but he can also operate on the right side. You want him to drop deep and help with the second phase and build up when they build up the 2-1, and that transitions into a 2-2. You want him to overlap on the right. You want him to combine. He also has a good understanding of that. Just very, very, very useful. So many capacities in the middle. I hope I never see him a right wing again. Much better here. So with all that in mind, you have to understand that there's going to be a risk, and that really does limit your ceiling when you're looking at Spurs players. High floor, low ceiling, I would say, for most of them. Maybe Son aside. But to be fair, this was just like a bread and butter fixture for him, given how they were defending. I think it will become significantly more difficult against Palace when it's very compact and he's going to have to stay relatively wide, as wingers have done so against, for example, how Salah did against Palace, especially given it's at their ground. Solanke, same thing. High floor, low ceiling, and you're just going to have to accept that he's going to have these type of games where he's going to blank because he doesn't look super sharp. So at that price, you could probably, you've had your best fixture, well, out of the four. I don't think Ipswich will defend that badly. Maybe if you wanted to move off for the next two, somewhat of an option, just something to consider. Southampton and Leicester, I mean, Southampton have done it again. They really should have. At 2-0, you have to close the game out, right? Especially given it's so important. Leicester are up to like 9 points now. 9 or 10 points. I think, 10. It's like a point off United. They're doing really, really well in terms of the league table. And good on them, right? Like I said earlier, they're actually not as bad as people think. I think away from home, they concede too many chances still. And like you can get at them. Obviously, Southampton, both sides, I think, at home and away, you can get at them. But when you travel to the King Power, just be a bit careful. And both of these teams have attacking quality. So again, in terms of the clean sheet prospect, just hamper the expectations slightly, especially when you go to their grounds. And lastly, for the learning and observation section, Everton, we gave them their own section and they delivered. Mikalenko delivered. Pickford delivered. McNeil delivered. And obviously DCL did not. Now, we'll leave it to the transfer plans, but when he's, I don't know what to do. Like at this price he's still generating chances. I think it's 5 big chances in the last 4 games since I've bought him. 0 goals, not a single assist either. And he created a big chance for Decore as well. That's 6 potential returns from a fairly decent probability. And I get 0. Like, I'm not complaining. I'm not really sure what I'm meant to do in the spot. I think I just got to let it ride out. Fulham at home is a nice fixture with Anderson suspended. I think they're somewhat susceptible defensively, given like if it's Pereira and Diasar, I think you can get at him. And in general, Marcus Silva's quite a forward and attacking thinking manager, I think, and he's willing to give up a little bit of defensive security. So I fancy Everton at home to Fulham. I expect them to win that game. I have to keep him. McNeil, I was speaking about earlier. I love this guy as an asset so much. I hope he doesn't rise in price again, or he's not on his way to doing so. But that little bit of technical quality to produce the assist for McNeil, he's had that in the locker for so long. I think now that he's playing this role, people are starting to see it more and more and more. And the fact he's getting some returns, so people are taking more notice of him. But with that technical quality, set pieces, the role, the fixtures, the price, brilliant option. And then this was good for Pickford because it showed that like they conceded enough chances and instances, Everton, where Ipswich could have scored. But it also shows that, therefore, that Pickford can make saves and he has a high ceiling in these away games, which is what we spoke about. 3 out of the next 4 were away, coming from last week. And Mikalenko at 4-3, I mean, just top value. With Ipswich, they will create, like, especially at home, they will make chances. They just need to improve their finishing and be more efficient, and they'll have to be if they're looking to stay in the league. I still wouldn't be buying Davis or Delap because I think you're never really going to get a clean sheet from Ipswich. Like, pretty much never, ever. So then you're just relying on attacking returns every single week, and you're not going to get it. And plus, with him, it's probably more assists than goals. So I don't like it. Liam Delap, I think there's too many options that for just a little bit more, like Visser, for example, who we're going to come on to in the next bit, because he's someone that I really like and could open up a lot of nice routes, very, very solid routes that I just don't think you can justify it. And the fixtures aren't even that great anymore. So for me, that's just a pretty easy fade. I also think that Ipswich actually, they'll be one of the teams to target anyway, but I do think you can score quite a few against them. So I like that. United return to winning ways. Pinnock from set pieces, big box threat, have a soft spot for him anyway because he's always been so good to me. So yeah, I think that is a really, really solid option from next week for the next 5, especially 3 of the next 5 are at home. Some of the sides they play aren't particularly good in the air. I think Wolves and Bournemouth aren't that great, so and I think they play them. No, they don't play Wolves. Scratch that. They definitely play Bournemouth and someone else that's not good in the air, and the price is so good. And to be honest, I don't really agree with the narrative that Brentford are that good defensively. I like the fixtures in his box threat. Vissa, I spoke, could unlock so much. He got 30 minutes against United, and Sharda definitely is not the best number 9 in the league. And Vissa, they're a much better side with Vissa playing there, right? A lot more clinical as well, and a better connector in terms of his ability to carry and just the way he combines with others and general, I guess, intelligence of the number 9 position, or understanding and knowing this is probably a better way to phrase it and a more accurate way to phrase it. So I really, really like him as an option if you can potentially facilitate him somehow with your transfer plans. And I expect him and Mbeumo to do well. But I think given he's back in the side now, he'll actually take some of that output away from Mbeumo because they won't need to, quote unquote, solely rely on the Cameroonian. So yeah, I really like that. Garnacho genuinely could be a good option. Me and Chai were speaking about this before this run, and he's just got goals in him, and he's shown that on a repeated basis. The fixtures I really like from the next 5 in terms of an attacking standpoint for them, and I really wouldn't mind a punt. If you fancy a bit of a differential at this price point, well, it's an interesting category, right? It's very much open to interpretation. I quite like it. In terms of United's overall game performance, it was okay. I don't think it inspired much, but they got the winning over the line. So maybe that builds some confidence going down the line. To finish us off, we have transfer plans. Now, last week, you saw the new graphic, but I realized that there are so many routes that I could take, so many ideas that I have, that putting them all onto one screen is probably just a little bit confusing, and if I did like 3-4 times the same. So I thought we'd have a pretty open discussion, and a discussion where I would like your feedback in the comments. I would like some ideas. Like I said, I use models for idea generation primarily, so why not use the comments for some idea generation as well? I would love to hear what you guys think, and I am sure you will open my eyes up to a move that I had not considered. Okay, the current plan, which I don't really like that much, is rolling 9, and then I'll have to play some menu against Concert, which I kind of didn't want to do, and it's Bournemouth away, and I guess finishing inconsistency as shown by the Arsenal game. And I'd have to keep him, which isn't great. So that in 10, I can offload Foden, move him to Palmer, and get rid of this expected minutes worry that I didn't think existed really, or at least not to this extent. Have him for the Man United fixture, which will be really, really good. I'm okay having him for the Arsenal fixture now as well, given it's at home. And then sell Gvardiol to fund it. I could pretty much go to like whoever I like in terms of the cheap defenders. Obviously, I'll just get Ryan Knight-Nori, right? Opens up even more cash, and he has a good fixture in Gameweek 10. Then, after that, DCL to Cunha in 11. Okay, cool. But that means I have to hold some menu for the whole thing, for Villa away, or City at home, and then he's got another away fixture after that. So it's a bit, but is the menu really that bad that I should take an entirely different route when this move isn't too bad? Maybe, maybe not. The other thing, though, is it would involve taking Gvardiol out. And I know the fixtures aren't that great, but at least Lewis could be benched in some of those fixtures because the harder ones he tends to be so because those sides just generally carry more transitional threat and a better left winger, more physicality, etc., etc. That's kind of what you need to be good now. And for those reasons, if he's going to play that more advanced attacking role, okay, fine, they may not keep clean sheets, but if you're going to pop up with goals every game like he did last season, why would I sell him? Like, he's such good value. I picked him up at 5.9. I picked Josko Gvardiol playing a fullback role at a price that starts with 5. That's ridiculously cheap. He should be 6.5 as well. I've got him on the cheap, just like I got Gabriel at the start of the season, and everyone's getting Gabriel on the cheap because he should be 6.5. So, can I really justify selling him? It's difficult, okay? The other thing is, maybe I go back to my other thing, which was I would really like McNeil, okay? And if I would really like McNeil, I'm just blocking myself from getting him for this entire run. What if I went this week Semenyo to McNeil, and then in 10, I basically just fade Cole Palmer. And then in 11, I can go DCL to Cunha, should I wish. I can persist maybe with DCL and McNeil if Everton and those two in particular are really on fire. And then I could move Foden up to like a Cole Palmer and try and find the funds elsewhere. Maybe I could sell a Havertz because the fixtures aren't that great. It's like, what? Newcastle, Chelsea, Forest, which isn't even that good. Like, even our Chelsea game, like Forest isn't the greatest fixture. So with that in mind, is that a better move? But then I'm losing Havertz, which is a pretty big deal. I'm somewhat committing to keeping DCL for another week. I may be blocking myself from getting Cunha. So those are all things I'm considering, right? So that's two routes. But then what I also haven't spoken about is how I meant to shift my defense down the line, because I'll still have Konsa and Hall. Now, Konsa's pretty decent from 12, but it leaves me pretty meh for 10 and 11 and 9 to an extent, because I've got Semenyo playing against him. And would I really like that? No. So it's probably going to be one of those three routes, the two I've spoken about, or I go back to more so of an original plan where I get McNeil this week, get a defender next week, just persist with Foden, let's play the expected minutes game and get Palmer in 12. So I'd be really interested to hear what your guys' opinions are. And even if it's none of them, just tell me what you think. Okay, could we sell Erling Haaland as well and fun moves that way? Yeah, but I haven't had 2 free transfers. I haven't rolled a free transfer in over 6 months. Very weird statistic to pull out. Kind of a crazy one for a content creator, especially as well. So yeah, that is something to note, I guess. But yeah, I would very much like to hear your opinions and let me know what you think in the comments. And that is all she wrote for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. I thought there was quite a bit of analysis in there, and there was way more we could speak about. And we will do so when we get to the everything you need to know video, etc., etc. Please do consider subscribing. Delighted with the rank so far. I hope you guys have had a great start to the season. In the comments, let me know how you've done so far. I always really enjoy reading the section. And you know what? Shout out to you guys, because even my grandma said, who watches the videos, just as a supportive grandma type of thing, she's like, oh, the comment section for the number of subscribers is so positive and it's really good. And I was like, yeah, it's probably the thing I'm most happy with in terms of the numbers and stuff. So thank you very much for that. And you put a smile on my grandma's face. Very grateful for. Please do consider subscribing, because I do think it is in your best interest, as we're having a good season and the analysis has been good. I shall see you on Tuesday, I assume, for another video. Goodbye, and have a great weekend of what remains, and have a great week for the start.